You know, I have to say that I've participated in a lot of formal mentorship programs, but most of the successful mentorship relationships I've had have been in the informal arena, I would say. Particularly in legal services in my current work situation, it's evolved as an informal mentorship and then it's become a formal mentorship sort of relationship. And so I think as I look back at the successful formal mentorship programs, they've been helpful for really, I think, basic coaching, guidance, and perspectives on standard questions about exploring career paths, that sort of thing. And so the value of formal mentorships has been helpful for me to the extent that it gets me to start networking and build up the confidence to reach out to others. But really the informal mentorships that have just kind of evolved over time, whether in the college setting, the law school setting, or the formal work setting, it's become more natural because of the fact that the mentor, and I've had many, has really taken the time to just meet with me, whether it's frequent lunches or coffees or whatever. And the context for the mentorships have often been about the career paths as well as balancing life outside of the office. So I think that the successful informal mentorships have actually been the kind of ones that I would say have become long-standing relationships well beyond any kind of period in time for me, because I've actually maintained long-lasting relationships with the mentors that I've had since I started in legal services in 1999, actually. And I really value the relationships, not just because of the mentoring that I received, but really the kind of meaningful friendships that have evolved. Over the last 12 years or so that I've been a lawyer, I would say, no, I'm sorry, 15 years now. I'm dating myself. 15 years of being a lawyer. I think that I've had, I would say, about 8 that I can really call like people who have mentored me. I've had several. I really feel like I probably have a very broad definition of mentor and mentorship relationships, but I have to say that there's probably about 8 mentors that that meet that earlier definition that I was telling you about in terms of the evolution of the relationship from one who has really provided guidance for me, taught me either substantively or coached me in my career path, and then has really just evolved into a really dear friendship. And yeah, 8, I would say. They made time. And it was, I would say, the mentors actually reached out to me actively, in both in a formal setting as well as in an informal setting. In the work situation, one of the most successful, I think, mentorships that, in terms of a formula that I can actually recall, is that when I was being trained up for a leadership position, my mentor would always include me in a number of key meetings. And so there was a formal aspect of the mentorship where she was teaching me. She was bringing me along, credentialing me, introducing me in terms of my role formally. But then afterwards, we would debrief about the event, the meeting, or the assignment. And so there was definitely a formal aspect of what I was supposed to learn and what even beforehand, even before assignments were given and before the meetings. And then informally, we would also have lunches and coffees and just informal discussions in the office or in the hallways. So it really had, I think, a multidimensional approach to the relationship, which also, it was just kind of a natural evolution over, gosh, a 4 to 5 year period. And I think now it's evolved to the point where it feels like I still honor her, and actually there's actually a few people that I feel this way about, and that I really honor the relationship for what the person has taught me about, but it's gotten to the point where I feel like we're also colleagues and we're consulting. And I think that that is, for me, a very valuable experience in mentoring, and a kind of model of mentoring that I wish to replicate going forward with, future mentees, formally or informally. There were a lot. I mean, I think a lot in terms of just trying to find balance, and which is not an unusual thing for a lot of parents who are trying to figure out how to find the right balance between the demands of a job and that they really are passionate about, and the demands of family and small children, which I'm also very passionate about. And then somewhere in between is a whole bunch of other obligations. So the obstacles that over the last several years that I feel like I've been encountering have been finding that right balance, and then projecting that kind of desired balance at work as well. And I know that sounds like, maybe a little too cliche about finding the balance between work and the quality of work life and the quality of personal life, but that really is, I think, a recurring issue that that I'm finding when I talk to a lot of mentees, whether it is, when a new attorney is starting out, or somebody who's not an attorney, and then trying to figure out what kind of environment do I want to promote at work as well that encourages a healthy balance, rather than just demanding a focus and compartmentalization on churning out really good work. Because I think finding a balance that is going to sustain people in both worlds, the professional and personal, is important. They were there to just listen to me, oftentimes to listen to me ventilate, and most importantly, to provide a reality check. They helped me arrive at the right answers, and sometimes I didn't have an answer, but they were just there to help listen. Absolutely, absolutely. I really do think so. And in some ways, I think it's necessary to have a formal mentorship program, and to also reinforce that with the informal mentoring that can happen, and outreach that can happen and should happen to retain diversity and promote diversity within the legal profession. And I think that is because I think it's important, because it's hard to express what it is that other role models from your own background offer you. And I think sometimes the struggles that attorneys of color may have, and not just attorneys of color, but attorneys from, marginalized groups actually experience, are hard to explain in terms of the struggles that we may encounter as lawyers in developing our lawyering skills and dealing with certain contexts, whatever that adversity may be, whether it's, in court because you're arguing your first motion, or your first interaction with a managing partner, or your first interaction on an advocacy team. You're going to, because you're from a diverse background, inevitably I really think you're going to experience certain things that you need another person who you feel you identify with to get through, not just as a role model, but somebody to talk through with. And I think it makes a difference. It made a difference for me in terms of the kinds of decisions that I needed to make over the last several years, and the kinds of sensitive conversations that you may not feel comfortable having openly, with just anybody. So I do think it's very important, and there is a strong correlation there, which means that there's a lot more responsibility for experienced attorneys who are from diverse backgrounds to do more outreach. And I think there's a place definitely for a formal program, but oftentimes it's the informal approaches as well that will be that much more meaningful and effective. Keeping in touch, keeping in touch, and gosh, I find that by trying to reach out more now as a mentor and just checking in is really the important thing. Making the time to actually be there to listen, to check in on how things are going, whether it is that you're, wanting to serve as a practical advisor or just kind of being there to, you know, listen to whatever the person, the mentee needs. So making the time, and making a lot of time, actually, I think, is important, because for me, it's been, as I was saying earlier, gosh, several years, a relationship that started out as a mentorship to now evolving to one of friendship. It's taken many hours of actual formal meetings and lunches and coffees. So making the time is really, I just want to be simple about that, because making the time to actually meet with a person, to be a teacher or to be, a sounding board. It's pretty much a blank slate. I expect that the mentee is going to ask me whatever questions that are on their minds, really, and to just engage. I'm actually pretty open to whatever it is and trying to be responsive to whatever the needs of the mentee, whatever their needs are. I want to try and be responsive. So I don't necessarily have any kind of actual formal expectations of the mentee, but assume that they're going to want to stay in touch and to learn and ask me questions that they may have on their minds. Otherwise, I feel like as a mentor, I get a lot out of the relationship as well, because I learn from the mentees so much. Successful mentorships have really been key to retention, of people in the legal profession. That's been, and it's been true for me, actually. And so whatever it is, the amount of time that my mentors have taken to just be there to support me or to talk things through with me, that has been key. And so in terms of retention. Secondly, I would say I really have learned a lot about how to be a lawyer, and exercising judgment relating to kind of just the profession. So that in terms of like how to be a lawyer and the confidence to actually be a lawyer and to feel proud that I'm a lawyer, that's been great, because the mentors that I've had have been role models and successful lawyers that have done a number of different things. And confidence was really big. So that also kind of, I guess, blurs into that first lesson learned, which is that it really is important if we as a profession in Washington State are wanting to address the issue of retention. That is going to be key, that confidence of how to be a lawyer, and that yes, what you bring is valuable. It spills into, a person feeling valued and wanting to actually do more